I wanted to show you this shirt. This was given to me by a fellow musician, a friend of mine back from my days in Florida. And I thought it would be fun to wear this in the video since it goes in line with what I plan to talk about. But alas, this shirt is about 2 sizes too small. A few videos back, I started by talking about guitar players who turned to the piano to expand their musical vocabulary. This naturally led me to talking about the Beatles, since each band member played the piano to a degree. Now, I believe that Paul McCartney was the most skillful piano player, and I devoted a video to the most famous Beatles songs primarily written by McCartney on piano. And now it's John Lennon's turn. Now, McCartney's piano songs are mostly conventional, very carefully constructed, almost classical sounding in some cases. Many of them could be called standards. I've played several of them when I did solo piano gigs. I'd be sitting there in my tuxedo at the grand piano, play something like this. They make for beautiful piano solos. Now, Lennon's piano songs, in my opinion, are a different breed. They are often unpredictable, and in some cases harder to play as solo piano pieces. You can't easily fake your way through most Lennon piano songs. And you won't find thousands of cover versions of I Am the Walrus. John Lennon's piano-based songs often reveal a more introspective, experimental, or emotionally direct side of his artistry. Some of his most profound and musically adventurous Beatles songs were written at the piano. John Lennon once said that he felt less in control at the piano, which made him write differently. In fact, to quote him directly, he said, "I'm not technically good, but I can make a song out of it. That's the beauty of primitive piano." So his method of using an instrument where he felt slightly out of control led him to create chord progressions that were often quite unorthodox, or you could even call them incorrect if you were trying to follow traditional rules of music theory. As I emphasized in my video about Paul McCartney's piano songs, same thing goes for John Lennon. This is not an exhaustive list, and I'm only covering songs that he wrote for the Beatles. Now, if you are a knowledgeable Beatles fan, some of this may seem rather obvious, but keep in mind that there are actually folks out there who don't know everything about the Beatles. I know that's hard to believe. I considered myself a fairly knowledgeable Beatles fan, but I'm learning new things about them from some of the comments that I've received. Let's start with one of Lennon's most famous piano songs. Now, I just said that I was confining myself to his Beatles songs, but this song is so famous that it is considered essential by many. Once I start to play it, you probably know what it is. It's almost impossible to discuss his piano work without this song. It was written at his white Steinway in Tittenhurst Park, influenced by Yoko Ono's book Grapefruit and by her conceptual poetry. And of course, there's a message that Lennon is trying to get across in the lyric. So you have these simple block chords in C major, very peaceful, very hymn-like. So the piano underpins the message with sincerity and clarity. It's very meditative. But let's get back to his Beatles work. Now, actually, this is a song, you can at least play the beginning of it as a solo. He wrote his section of A Day at the Life on the piano, specifically these haunting opening verses. I read the news today, oh boy. And even though the recording starts out with guitar, Lennon composed his section of the song at his piano at home in Weybridge, Surrey, likely in early 1967. The chord progression is very much something you would come up with on the piano. You're starting in G, and then you have this descending bass line. So the piano serves as a foundation for developing the song's harmonic progression. And then it goes to F. I'm not very good at playing and talking at the same time, but now McCartney has the contrasting middle section. Woke up, fell out of bed, da-da-dee. And of course that was also composed on piano and brought in as a separate idea, and they decided to join them together. And eventually they, of course, recorded that massive orchestral thing that used to scare little kids like me when they heard it for the first time. The story about how this song was written, of course, is very well known. You can find other videos that talk about it. You end up with this very dramatic, cinematic song. And the writing is sparse on the piano, but it's emotionally loaded. Very different than what you'd get on guitar. Obviously, I could spend hours talking about what many consider to be the Beatles' greatest song. All I have to do for this one is play the opening part, and you know what I'm playing. Another song written on piano at Lennon's home in Weybridge. A fascinating example of his adventurous, surreal songwriting. There's a famous book by a gentleman named Ian MacDonald. It's called Revolution in the Head, The Beatles, Records, and the 60s. To quote from his book, he says, Lennon was, quote, prodding about on his piano when he heard the droning two-note siren of a police car in the distance. He absorbed this pattern into an obsessive musical structure built around a perpetually ascending, descending M.C. Escher staircase of all major chords without tonic sharps or flats, the most unorthodox sequence he ever devised. And of course, as far as the words were concerned, he was inspired by Lewis Carroll's The Walrus and the Carpenter, from Through the Looking Glass. He was also inspired by the nonsense poetry of Edward Lear, and also by a schoolboy who wrote to him saying that his teacher was having the class analyze Beatles lyrics. And so Lennon decided to write something deliberately absurd to outwit the analysis, or the analyzers. Anyway, so the song starts out with this descending chord progression. Already, this is very unusual. It's like, what key are we in? Then it goes to D. Whoops. And now it seems like we're in the key of A. And so you notice he has this, it's all major chords. Occasionally he throws a descending thing into the bass. Notice it's really tough to play the tune with everything that's going on here. This is... McCartney would never write a melody like this. It's pure Lennon, but it is so interesting. And anyway, you have all kinds of interesting chord progressions. Let's see. I'm looking at my little chord chart here. The second time through, it's a little bit different. And this kind of progression, very much a piano thing. then he goes to F, and then all of a sudden to B. Once again, very, very unusual. And then he walks his way back up. I am the Eggman. They are the Eggmen. I'm not going to sing it in his key. Goo goo gajoob. Wow. I Am the Walrus. You need to go back and listen to the whole thing. Obviously, on that piano part, which on the recording is played on an electric keyboard, and then George Martin builds this amazing score with the whole string sections and backing vocalists and BBC radio broadcasts mixed in. Crazy stuff. Anyway, here's another Lennon song. If I play the opening riff, perhaps you'll recognize it. It's Hey Bulldog. Now, according to Paul McCartney, they were at Abbey Road to shoot a promotional film for Lady Madonna, and they ended up recording this Lennon song. And the title kind of morphed while they were recording it. It was originally called Hey Bullfrog, but Paul began barking like a dog during the outro, and so they changed the title to Hey Bulldog. Lennon, in a typically self-depreciating comment, said, it's a good-sounding record that means nothing. And so you have this riff. Must have been fun to play. Then he ends up in B major. Now notice what he's doing here. He's playing eighth notes. This is not something that you'd play on guitar. You wouldn't have a guitarist strumming eighth note chords like this. Well, maybe some strange guitar player would do it, but this is really a piano thing. Now, it's sort of in B major, but when he gets to the chorus where they start singing You Can Talk to Me, this is the part that my wife says sounds like a spy movie. Anyway, this is one of the few Lennon-led Beatles tracks where the piano really rocks. Of course, it's one of my favorite Beatles songs. The recording is amazing. The bass part is crazy. The drumming is spectacular. And then George Harrison unleashes this great guitar solo. But here's another Lennon keyboard song that often you hear this. So this song is actually very much associated with Paul McCartney's keyboard part. But when you get to the verse, this is definitely something that would have been written on keyboard. What gives it away is this descending bass line. Another Lennon thing going to this F. And all of a sudden we wind up on a D minor chord, and then we have another descending bass line. And now all of a sudden we're in the key of B flat. So we've modulated from A to B flat, but by a rather unusual route. Newspaper flowers or cellophane flowers of yellow and green. And this, notice once again, this is a Lennon characteristic. The melody just hangs on one note. Whoops. All of a sudden, now we're in the key of G. Very much a piano composition by John Lennon. You probably recognize that if you're a Beatles fan. It sounds a little different being played on piano. But of course, this is the famous song Because. I've done a whole video on this one. Many of you know the story of how this song was supposedly inspired by Yoko Ono playing the Moonlight Sonata. Lennon asked her to play it backwards. And then he composed the song at the piano from there. Now, I actually tried playing the Moonlight Sonata backwards to see if it sounds like Because, and it doesn't really. But the atmosphere is very similar. And so you end up with this harmonically complex and keyboard-centric song. This is actually one of John Lennon's piano-based songs that could be arranged as an effective solo piano piece. You heard me play the introduction. The verse would sound a little bit like this, you know. Hard to know where the melody is because it's three-part harmony all the way through. I should be looking at the sheet music, but I'm playing it by ear. Anyway, this could really turn into a nice solo piano piece. So this next Lennon piano song is pretty strange, and I couldn't imagine McCartney writing something like this. And it starts like this. Now, interestingly, the piano part on the recording of Sexy Sadie was played by Paul McCartney, but the chord progression is described going back to Ian MacDonald's book on the Beatles records. He describes the chord progression of this song as endlessly maneuvering. It's a rather unsettling chord progression. In fact, let me play it for you. I'm going to look at my chord chart over here so I don't mess it up, because like I said, it's hard to fake your way through some of Lennon's piano-based songs. So it starts out. Okay, that's pretty basic progression, you know, it's 4, 5, 1. But then all of a sudden, okay, and then, well, where do we go from here? Why not just jump down to D? Notice that jump from F sharp to C. It keeps going from G to F sharp. So you have this very much something you'd come up with on the piano if you're prodding about, trying to figure out where to go. Maneuvers. It sounds like now we're in B minor. Okay, sounds like we're going back to G. But here comes that F sharp. But then we go from F sharp to C, then to D. So we're sort of back to G. But we keep going to that F sharp, but now in F. Then D. Now, the interesting thing about this is in the middle section, it borrows the chord progression from here, there, and everywhere. Listen to that song and then listen to this one, and you'll hear it. But that's about all. And now he goes A flat, G, F sharp. I mean, who's going to write a progression like this? John Lennon. Another Lennon piano-based song is taken off of the famous Sgt. Pepper album. Starts out like this. Being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. If you're a Beatles fan, you know the whole story behind how Lennon wrote this famous song. They were filming a promotional video for Strawberry Fields Forever, and during a break in filming, Lennon goes into a curiosity shop, buys a poster. It's about this big show that's going to be put on in 1843 by a group of tumblers or something like that. Anyway, he takes the poster home, hangs it up on the wall. Sitting at his piano, he begins to sing phrases from the poster and comes up with this crazy song. You're starting out in what sounds like D minor. D minor, but then it jumps to a G chord, and now we're in C minor. And then we go to A, and now all of a sudden we're in D minor. Back in C minor again. So a strange thing for a song to do, to start in one minor key and then modulate down, or start in one minor key, I should say, and then modulate up to the next one, but then go back down. And of course you get to the part of Henry the Horse dancing the waltz, and all of a sudden, of course, the song goes into waltz time, and you have this chord progression. Now, obviously, I can't play all the crazy stuff that's happening on the record, and that's what would make this song a little bit difficult to play as a solo piano piece. Where'd this chord come from? That's B major. And now, well, we got to get back to C minor. So what do? We just bang on a G7 chord, and now we're back in C minor. And so it works its way through the C minor, and then the chorus, or actually the verse, is now played in D minor. You got to listen to the record to get all this, the crazy structure of this song. And then it actually modulates back to E minor again, and it ends in this massive wash of sound in the key of E minor. Crazy. It's just one of those things that Lennon could do. Now, of course, there's one more famous piano-based John Lennon song. Now and Then, based on his solo piano demo from the late 70s. I've done a whole video where I analyze this song, so I'm not going to worry about it too much right here. And of course, the other songs that the Beatles finished in the anthology series, taken from these demos that John Lennon had done, they were all done on piano. But Lennon's piano songs, they do feel different, don't they? Just like a lot of McCartney's piano songs feel different from the guitar-based ones. His piano-based songs are often very reflective, very surreal. As you can see, the chord progressions are crazy. These songs are almost cosmic. His guitar-based songs were often more rhythmic, biting. Some of them were very confessional. On guitar, Lennon tended to use simple but extraordinarily emotionally powerful chords. Many times his songs were built on riffs or blues forms, or some of the later songs he did on the White Album, finger-picking, beautiful songs like Julia and Dear Prudence. Now, the piano provided Lennon with a more fluid environment for his melodies. The guitar offers tight phrasing, percussive rhythm, urgency. But on the piano, Lennon's songs are often very dreamy, mournful, searching, endlessly maneuvering, sometimes quite strange. On guitar, Lennon's songs are often more assertive, rebellious, but then some of them are very intimate. These are general statements, and there are always exceptions, and you may be thinking of some right now, so I would encourage you to leave those in the comments. If you'd like me to explore any of the songs I've highlighted in this video in more depth, if you'd like to learn how to play them, at least play the chord progressions, let me know. Once again, I maintain that most of Lennon's piano-based songs are more difficult to play as solo piano pieces, with the possible exception of Because, or Imagine, and I'm sure there are other songs that could work. It would certainly be fun to try, and you can definitely learn to play the piano part and let somebody else handle the tune. Well, I think I've rambled on long enough about the piano-based Beatles songs of John Lennon. So next up in this series, we'll look at the keyboard-based songs of George Harrison, who I believe at one point in the Beatles' career became quite interested in playing the organ. And so you've got a couple of songs that he did that are very organ-based. And of course, we do have a couple of songs from Ringo, and you Beatles fans know what songs I'm referring to because there aren't that many of them. So if you have any questions, any comments, any songs I've missed, please be sure to leave those in the comment section. If you'd like to support my work, you can go to my Patreon page. The link is in the description. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Majority of my viewers have not subscribed to the channel, so if you would take the time to do that, I would appreciate it very much. That helps the channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next one.